Gonna start on the headlights today. The headlight gaskets, you can see, are kind of cracked and have some overspray on them. And we're got a little dirt inside there. So we're gonna take the headlight covers off, polish them, polish the headlights, clean the paint. And we have some new gaskets. So we'll get those on, see how it looks. Got the cover off, and of course there's just some dirt hiding underneath it, so we will get that cleaned up, put a little polish in there, get the paint cleaned up, and then we'll work on the glass. Well, it looks like the surface by the headlight is a little bit rough and the paint's not real great, so I'm going to go in there and just touch that up. I'm going to smooth it a little bit, prime it, and paint it, and then we'll put the cover back on. So of course I gotta get the gasket on too, but I was hoping that would just clean up, but it wasn't just dirt. It is a pretty rough surface. We want that to look good. So I will stop and wet sand and prime and paint. Now, the surface around the headlight was pretty rough, like overspray with some, I don't know, debris in it. So I sanded it all down, then wet sanded it, got it nice and smooth, taped it off. So now we're going to shoot some primer on it. Okay, we got the primer in. Let that sit for a bit, and then we'll shoot some white. Well, I've got the primer dried now, so getting ready to spray some white. One headlight at a time. We'll get this one all painted up, and then we're working on the gasket. I've got a new gasket right here. So I've polished the glass lens inside and out, and I've stretched the new rubber seal around it. So we'll let that take shape, and then we'll polish the chrome, pop that on it. So now we're going to shoot some white paint. Yeah, fresh paint looks a whole lot better. So we'll let that dry. We'll put her back together again. Just a matter of sanding all that rough stuff out, getting it looking fresh. I pulled the tape off, and we got the white paint done inside, so that really freshens it up. So I've got the new seal on the headlight glass, letting that kind of stretch to shape. I'll poke holes for the fasteners to go in, and then we will reinstall that. One down, one to go. Same thing, as they say, repeat as necessary. So we will clean this one up and paint it. All prepped and ready for primer. Nice fresh paint. Well, I am feeling rather proud of myself right now for getting this gasket in and the headlight trim on. That is not an easy job. So when you're at a show and you see Avantis with nice headlight gaskets, give that guy a thumbs up. That is not a fun or easy job. But you can see we got the paint redone inside, fresh gasket, really looking good. And just to give you an idea, this is what I took off. And probably factory piece. And so it's got some dry rot on it and served its use for many, many years. A little overspray. So that's what I'm taking off. So now I get to do this all over again with this guy, which is going there. So I may take some shots in between just to show how I did it. I'm sure the guys that do this on a regular basis have some neat tricks, but this is a tough job. I was kind of surprised. So I'll kind of take you through step by step what I did, just for the record. So here's the driver's side, and of course these are glass, so you've got to be extra careful with them, which is why I'm using soft surfaces and a little extra protection on the ground just in case I fumble something. The trick with this, this is the old gasket, of course. You can see it's got cracks and overspray. You got to get that off, and I'm not going to risk doing this one-handed, but I'm just going to slowly go around, loosen it. Right now it's just stuck on there, and you don't want to pry on anything. You don't want to deform the chrome ring. So here, brake coming loose. I'm just going to go slowly around this thing and pop that chrome rim off, and then I'm going to pull the gasket off. Okay, I just about got it. I've been just going around and slowly pulling things off because that rubber is stuck to this. I don't want to deform the chrome. Here it's sticking. So boom, we got that off. And you can see this gasket is wrapped around the glass. And the new gasket works just the same. So I'm going to peel that off. Fortunately, this thing's a little old, so it's coming right off. Getting the new one on isn't quite as fun, and I'll try to show you as much of that as I can, but that's a three-handed job. There's the old gasket. And of course, with the glass, I will polish that, clean it, polish it inside and out, just so we have a really nice looking piece going back in. So I'm going to polish this. See, we got a little nick in it right there. See if I can get some of that out, and then start hanging the new gasket. I'll also tidy up this chrome. It's got just a little bit of overspray on it. You can see a little bit right there. I'll just clean it up again. Once it's all together, it'll look real nice. So I'm going to clean the glass, clean the chrome, and we'll take a look. Okay, here's just a couple tricks that helped me. Obvious things once you've done it. The headlights, these things aren't just flat. I think you can see they have kind of a wobbly shape to them because that's got to fit the fiberglass in the body. It's not a square, flat plane that's on. So you've got to get them oriented correctly. And of course, at the bottom, I think you can see this has a logo. Get that to focus. 63RQ, so, Avanti. But that tells you that's the bottom. So that's very helpful. You want to orient that correctly. Same thing with the chrome. Again, this stuff is not flat, and that's for a purpose. And if you lay that up on the body, I'm not going to get too close to the paint. Line up the screws, you can see top and bottom. So I'm going to just orient that right here. So I now know I've got these bottom and bottom. So when I go to put them together, they're going to go right on the car. So you sure don't want to go through all the hassle of getting that doggone gasket on and lay it up to the car and find out you got big gaps on the chrome ring because you put it on upside down or clocked it wrong. So I make sure before I start, I've got my bottoms oriented. Now I get to take this fun guy. And this wraps on the glass, and you got to be real careful because it almost looks like you want to tuck the glass in with this big flap, and you don't. You flip it over, this groove in the back, that goes into the glass. So I've got to get this turned 90 degrees and stuck in here, leaving this flap to lay over on the body. And you can see that right here, how it's tucked into the glass inside, and then this flap overlaps the paint. So again, you can put it on backwards, that's a possibility, but look at your cross section here. The extra long flap on the back side's got to go onto the paint, and then the inside, that tight groove, you're going to nest that in the glass. And that is a three-handed job. Unfortunately, I only have two, so I can't hold the camera with one. So I'm now going to start tucking that in, and I'll take a picture of that here when I've got it on. I'm just going to start with one edge, open that groove up, tuck it in, work my way around until I've got it all the way around. And that's probably the toughest job of the whole thing. Ta-da! Got the gasket on. And as I said, that flap, this long flap, has to go so that it lays out when you put this on the car. That'll contact the paint. And again, I've got that little 63RQ at the bottom, so I've got this thing oriented down. And I've gone around and I've just made sure that it's in square and it's in all the way. You just kind of roll it a little bit with your hand, go around there, and make sure it's completely covered. So now what I'm going to do, you can see there's slots for the 4 screws to go past the glass. And I'm going to lay the chrome ring on it, and I've checked the orientation of that. So now I've got that lined up with the 4 slots. Now, super careful not to scratch or nick the glass because you could break it. So what I'm going to do, you can see right here, there's the notch in the glass. And there's one of the holes. I'm going to make sure I've got this centered correctly. I'm going to run this drift through the hole and just punch a little hole in it. And then I'm going to take one of my sheet metal screws for attaching it, and I'm going to run that through And I'm going to make sure it's poked through both sides of the gasket, and that's going to help hold the gasket, keep it from wanting to uncurl. And I'm going to do that in all 4 places and make sure that I've got this chrome centered. And I'm going to run them all the way down so they're sticking out. So they're sticking out the back side. And that way I'll be able to take with those 4 screws sticking out, I'll be able to line those up with these 4 clips, nest that thing in, and then slowly start it, get them all started, make sure I've got that longer flap flipped out so that it's contacting the paint. And I'm going to ease them all in. And I'm going to be very careful not to over tighten, because I think anybody that's ever worked on a 61 Lark rear tail light knows what it means to over tighten that thing. You'll be screwing the screws down, and all of a sudden you'll hear, crack, and you just wasted a $100 tail light. Don't ask me how I know. So we're going to be super careful putting the screws in. So right now I'm just going to take the drift, poke 4 holes, get the screws in, and get that little assembly going. Okay, I got the 4 screws in. So that's kind of holding the whole mess together. And if you flip it over, you can see I've poked through the gasket. So it's kind of trapping that gasket so it can't slide back out on me. Plus, I've now got those screws sticking out. I can line those up with the clips on the car, and then I can put it on. So one last thing I got to do, clean the inside one more time. I don't want to get this all done and have fingerprints. That's the last thing I want to do, is have to take this back apart. So I'm going to clean it, and I'm going to lay it up to the body and start running screws down. I've got all 4 screws started, and just checking the chrome. Everything's laying properly, no gaps. But you notice the gasket's not flared out. See how it kind of flares out there? And here it's kind of stacked up. So what I'm going to do is go around it like this and just kind of pull it out. Make sure it's not falling in that groove behind it. So again, a couple handed jobs, so I'm going to set the camera down, but I'm going to snug it down a little bit, get a corner opened, run it down a little bit, go to the next fastener, pull the gasket out, run it down a little bit, keep going around, and easily bring the whole thing down, tightening it as I go, and making sure that this extra material is laying flat against the paint and not standing straight against it. So it's going to take me a couple turns around, but we'll take a look at that. And that's how it looks. So we got the flap laid over the paint, screws down. I'll probably wipe the headlight off one more time, but there we have the headlights done. Fresh paint, fresh gaskets, polished glass. Had a warm day today, so I thought I'd bring it out and just clean it up a little bit. Just hit it with the hose, work on the tires a little bit, spray down the chassis, just get some of the cobwebs off the bottom of the car. And she is looking good. Still working on weather strip and things like that, but you can see some of the details I've got done, like this quarter window. Looks nice. And of course, just finished up the headlights. They're not in the sun, but got those done. So yeah, just getting a little bit cleaned up.